Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Health Babes podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Becky Campbell with Dr. Crystal Hone. And today we are going to talk about what to do when you're ready for functional medicine. You've decided you're ready. You're going to do some testing and you're going to, do protocols and you're ready to get better, but you're too sensitive. You've either tried working with someone and the protocols they put you on, you couldn't tolerate any of the supplements. Or you've read someone's blog and they told you that this is the protocol you need and you couldn't tolerate that either. So there's different reasons for this, right, Crystal?
Right. Yeah. And it can really start to play with your head a little bit, and you can start to get discouraged when you've tried everything, or you have the answers of things you may need to work on, but you just can't get anywhere with it, and Beck and I have a lot of experience throughout the years with our patients that we've worked, one-on-one with. Some people just really need to go about this differently, and that's okay, right? Especially back with MCAS and histamine, and it's heartbreaking for these patients, some of them, the avenues that they have to take, and they just feel like they're on a hamster wheel, right? Not able to get better.
Yeah, and that was me too. I mean, I noticed I slowly started becoming really sensitive. And
Yeah.
mind you, years, all through my 20s, I mean, I wore perfume. I
Yep.
was literally bathed in Bath and Body Works,
I know, we all
lotion.
did.
And I was fine. And I could go spend hours at the mall or in Target or whatever. And then I started noticing that I was just not able to tolerate it. I was feeling really weird around perfume. I had to stop wearing it. Not only did I have to stop wearing it, I couldn't even be around it. And then I started having issues going into stores. Like I would go into Target and I had like 5 minutes and I had to get out of there because
Yeah.
my body was like breaking down. And this is before I even knew I had mast cell activation syndrome. So there's different reasons that this happens. There's different reasons you start to become sensitive. And I can tell you too, I'm one of those people too, who I knew I had gut issues, but I
Yeah.
couldn't do the protocol. I could not treat the gut issue. And so I was stuck going, okay, I know I have this. This is what I'm supposed to take, but I can't tolerate any of it because
Right.
my reaction to the supplements, which tends to be like, let's say you're doing a gut protocol, it tends to be if you're killing something, let's say you're killing bacteria or yeast, your body's going to take the toxins and stick them into the bloodstream, and you're going to have something called a Herxheimer reaction, which is commonly referred to as die-off. And you can feel really bad to the point
Yeah.
where you can't push through that.
Hmm.
So we have some people, and we don't, we've steered away from this a little bit because it is hard, to work with people who can't tolerate anything.
Yeah.
But we did at one time, remember, we were attracting a lot of people who literally couldn't tolerate anything. I mean, they
Yes.
literally couldn't
It's very
tolerate
hard.
breathing air.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's one side of the spectrum, but you don't have to be like that to be sensitive. So you can
Right.
definitely be where you can tolerate things. You just can't go through these like heavy protocols. And we've never really worked that way anyway. We're
Mm-mm.
always really careful. We really start people off
Gently.
slowly, gently, see how they do, add a little bit more, that kind of thing. So let's talk about why first this could be happening to you. So the most common reason we see this is mast cell activation syndrome. I'm sure if you're listening to this, you know what that is. But if you don't know what it is, we have these cells are part of our immune system. They're our first line of defense. They're called our mast cells. And they're there to sense any type of danger, basically, for the body or any reason we would need our immune system to kick in, right? So if you have a pathogen or an allergen, they're going to release these inflammatory chemicals like histamine, but histamine is not the only chemical that they release. They release tons of chemicals. And in response, all these chemicals have a job mostly to cause inflammation. And then that allows our immune system to kind of get in there, find the pathogen, kill it, whatever the job is. So when you know, just have a normal response, those chemicals, they break down and they move out of the body and everything's fine and you go back to the way you were. While when you have mast cell activation syndrome, you are releasing these chemicals sometimes when there really isn't a threat. So perfume isn't necessarily a threat like a virus is,
Right.
but people with mast cell activation syndrome, they're going to smell perfume and their mast cells are going to start to degranulate, which means break down and release chemicals. And someone else who doesn't have this would be fine. You know, that would never happen. So this is how you become that sensitive person. So, and it can be sensitivity to weather. I
Yeah.
remember when I was a kid, I would pass out in the heat and I had no idea why. And even as an adult, I've always been very sensitive to heat. I don't like to be in the baking sun like that. Just, it makes me feel bad. And a lot of
Yeah.
people say that. And a lot of people will say, am I allergic to the sun? You actually can be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how you explain, you know, mast activation syndrome, just being very sensitive to things that other people aren't sensitive to, which, by the way, can make it very hard to be in a relationship or
Oh my
even,
goodness.
yeah, even with family members or friends. They don't understand. They don't
Mhm.
understand why, you know, the two of you can be in the same environment and
Yep.
you're breaking down and they're fine. And we see this a lot with mold, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And that invisible illness almost, right?
Yes.
Where we heard that all the time back. And even I would even say I've seen you go through this with some of
Oh,
your
yeah.
relationships and things. People are like, well, you look just fine, right? And it's such a gaslighting thing to say, but it is very hidden. And sometimes it's not, screaming at you, so be sensitive to people and really listen and be open to hearing their journey if you have a family or a friend going through this, because it's a real thing and it's devastating and hard to go through.
And no one would choose that. No
No.
one would decide, I'm going to be the most annoying person to be
Yeah.
around because I'm not going to be able to do anything. You know, I want to be super high maintenance. Like
Yeah.
nobody chooses that.
I
So,
know.
you know, and we see it all the time. We've had to talk to spouses and be like, listen,
Mhm.
she
Yep.
looks fine on the outside. You're right, but she's not. And
Yeah.
luckily we had labs, you know, we could show them,
Yeah.
but not everybody does. So another reason, you know, if you can work with someone
Mhm.
that can do labs on you and show your spouse or whoever, this is what's going on, this is what's driving her issue or his issue, that's super helpful. But anyway, yeah, I did not have a supportive spouse at all. As a matter of fact, I was, you know, talked very down to for not feeling well and not being able to keep up with this person who was like a triathlete and all
Yeah.
these things. And I was like, I'm just trying to get through the day, you know,
I
and raise
know.
my kids. So
Mhm.
so anyway, so what happens then is, and this is not only with mast cell activation syndrome, but I'm just giving you an example. So then you become fearful. So let's say you have a reaction to something. Let's say your mast cells were really irritated. They're really dumping a lot of chemicals and you go to try a food or you go to try a supplement and your body is like, no way, I am
Mhm.
not tolerating this. Then your brain remembers that, and then we have this thing, part of our brain, it's the limbic system, so it's responsible for things like that. So if you have an interaction or you have a, you know, taste of, try a food or try a supplement and you did really poorly with that, your body creates a memory of that, or your brain creates a memory of that, and then it can tell you every time you go to have that food or even other foods or supplements that it's going to happen again. And so you will literally recreate the situation, even if it's not happening. So even if you don't have an issue with that food or don't have an issue with that supplement, your brain remembers it as you do, and it will actually recreate that. So that's, you hear us talk a lot about limbic system work, or, you know, working with the parasympathetic nervous system to rest and digest, versus being on like overdrive with the sympathetic overdrive, which is our fight or flight, so most people who are anxious and nervous about how they feel, they're stuck in that fight or flight response, that sympathetic nervous system response. So,
and I'll add to that too, Beck, too, is this goes true with trauma, you guys. So trauma and any stress, going back to the sensitivity with supplements, and we create these neural pathways and we get stuck in these neural pathways. So we need to get unstuck. So when we talk about that limbic system retraining, yes, we start to see beautiful things unfold for patients. Like they're not as sensitive to their supplements. They're able to tolerate foods, especially as they start to work on other things that impact the limbic system, like just trauma and stress. So
yeah.
that is probably one of the biggest things, wouldn't you say, that makes a huge turnaround for patients' limbic work?
Yeah, because I can tell you that I've had mast cell activation syndrome my whole life. It did not truly kick in until I was in a horrible relationship that was so stressful, and it was traumatizing to me.
Yeah, it
And
was.
I was holding so much in, and I was holding all this trauma in and had no outlet. And then I started really feeling really, really sick. And this is when I realized I had mast cell activation syndrome. So yeah, so we'll kind of go into that more in a minute, but I'm going to go through a couple of other things. So you can have that, you can have sensitivities like to foods, and it could be that you don't have mast cell activation syndrome, but that you have an issue with your gut health. So, when we have this lining of our gut, it's from our mouth to our anus, like it lines all of the whole thing. And we have
system.
whole system. We have these nice cells that they're supposed to be tight and really protect us from anything on the outside coming in and anything on the inside getting out into like the bloodstream. Well, we can have something called leaky gut where we get a little break in those cells, and that will cause, so let's say you're eating a food, it's supposed to be broken down really, 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 really well before it's used for nutrients and used for what it's supposed to be. But when you have leaky gut, it gets out into larger particles into the bloodstream, and it causes our like almost like a allergic reaction, but it's not allergic. It just makes you get really inflamed, and your body can actually start tagging things as an invader. So you can actually, it can be linked to autoimmune disease actually because of that. So sometimes people will get sensitive to foods because they have leaky gut, and their body is, pushing it out in large particles, causing a major inflammatory response that's starting to make you feel sick. Therefore, you do not do well with certain foods. So, one thing when I first got into practice is I used to do food sensitivity testing on everybody.
Yeah.
And food sensitivity testing can be great, but then we learned, you know what? These people
driving that.
Yeah, these people can't eat anything. They're lit up on this test. What am I going to do? I can't tell them to stop eating all these foods.
Right.
We started to notice they have really poor gut health. And once we've had them go through protocols to fix the gut, they could tolerate those foods again. So I will never, ever, ever again test someone for food sensitivities before working on their gut.
It's true, and it's amazing what we see once you start working on the underlying drivers that are impacting those sensitivities, whether it's histamine sensitivity, whether it's oxalate or salicylates with different foods, all the things. We even some patients who feel like they feel better on carnivore, usually, and this is not a blanket statement, it's a gut issue. And when we talk about gut issues, we're talking about underlying pathogens too. So why don't you get into a little bit of that back?
Yeah.
Like,
So
what are some of the drivers?
Meaning in the gut?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the gut, we have bacteria. Everybody has bacteria. We have some bacteria that's really beneficial. It really helps us. We want to have that bacteria in there. This is why people take probiotics. Probiotics are those bacteria, right? And this is why it can be a little dangerous to take antibiotics, and why they really try to stop over prescribing them, because when you are killing the bad bacteria, you're also killing the good with
Right.
antibiotics. So we want to keep that good bacteria there. But then we can have opportunistic bacteria. So opportunistic bacteria can become an issue. So, like, for an example, some opportunistic bacteria can actually increase histamine in the body. So if you're already struggling with breaking down histamine, which is one of those chemicals that's released from the mast cells, and you have histamine producing bacteria in the gut, that's going to be a big driver of your histamine intolerance and your mast cell sensitivity. So there's that. And then there's also things like H. pylori. H. pylori is a bacterial infection also, but it can cause ulcers. It can cause
Oh,
stomach cancer. It's no
yeah.
joke. And the interesting thing about H. pylori is it's transferred via saliva. So
Mhm.
a lot of people, whenever we do our stool tests and we have people come with H. pylori, we really encourage their partner to check for it too, because you're going to be transferring it back and forth, and then it's just not going to go away. So that, and then you can have yeast. There's different types of yeast that can become an overgrowth. It's okay to have a little bit of yeast. A lot of us do, but when
Yeah.
it's really when these things become an overgrowth,
Right.
that's an issue. And yeast is really a problem. I mean, it's it goes a lot hand in hand with mold. So if you have mold,
Mhm.
and they're going to drive each other, and you have to really work with someone who knows that, and work with someone
Yeah.
who knows how to handle both situations, so that you're not just working on one and then it's never going away. Um, and I actually had yeast candida, which a lot of people
Mhm.
refer to it as, when I was in college, and I had some amalgam fillings, so the mercury fillings.
Mhm.
And I learned later that the mercury can actually feed yeast. So I was
Oh,
doing this
yeah.
aggressive yeast protocol for like a year, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I had to actually get the fillings removed, and then I was able to get rid of it. So
You'd
you can
be
have that.
surprised at how much harbors in the mouth. So if
Oh
you're
yeah.
someone that has been down this road a lot, or you've done a lot of gut protocols, or you just seem like you can't get better, look at old like root canals, fillings, all these things. Go to a bioidentical dentist, because we harbor a lot in our mouth. And if you're constantly under a state of inflammation, or you're constantly fighting something, I see this a lot. And I'm going on a tangent here, but even with like chronic sinusitis or
Yeah.
sinus infections. So just keep that in mind if you're someone who's been struggling and that's a piece you haven't looked at. Wouldn't you agree, Beck?
Yeah, and we did a really good interview with Dr. Kelly Blodgett. So it was
Yeah.
one of our really early interviews, but I would really recommend you go back and listen to that, because he was great. It really starts
Right.
in the mouth. So you can have that. And then, we talked about leaky gut, and, there's a lot that can go on in the gut. You can have small intestine bacteria overgrowth. So
Oh,
when
yeah.
you're doing a stool test, you're looking at the large intestine. And so then there's also small intestine bacteria overgrowth. And that's tricky, because it's harder to get rid of. It's
Yeah.
harder to stay gone. It's like once
Mhm.
you're exposed to SIBO, which, so small intestine bacteria overgrowth is known as SIBO, people have a tendency to sometimes get it back.
Especially if they haven't figured out what the root driver of that is. Because, yes, you can work on the bacteria, but you got to figure out, okay, why is this bacteria accumulating? Is it
Yeah.
a motility issue? Is it the stress? Am I not sleeping enough?
Bile flow, like,
Yes,
there's so much. And a huge thing is hydrochloric acid. A
100%.
lot of people think that they're high in acid because their doctor tells them they are. So
Yeah.
they go on a proton pump inhibitor,
Ugh,
and they're reducing their acid even more. And that
making it
acid,
worse.
it will kill the bacteria. So it's kind of like a backflow from the large intestine to the small intestine of bacteria. It will kill that bacteria before it gets into the small intestine if you have enough hydrochloric acid. If you
Mhm.
start breaking, shutting that off, that's when we see a lot of SIBO. So,
And H. pylori,
and
right?
H. pylori for sure. So,
Yeah.
so these are all things that, you want to work with someone. My team does all of this. Like, we
Mhm.
work this is what we do. We work with everybody on figuring out why they are sensitive, why they're tired, why they're gaining weight, why they're every symptom you can imagine. And we do that with testing, but we figure out what testing they need by going through a really thorough history and
Yeah.
finding out like what's gone on in your life,
Mhm.
and so, then figuring out, okay, this is what I have going on. But to take it a step further, you also need someone who knows how to work with sensitive people if you're
Yes.
sensitive, because it's
Yes,
a whole different game. You
it
can get the
is.
testing, but if you can't tolerate the protocol and someone isn't aware of how to do that with you, you're going to feel way worse. This is
Yes.
why I saw, and I'm not going to say who, but I saw someone on Instagram that's very well known saying that everyone should do chelation
Oh,
the
good
other
Lord.
day.
Yes.
Chelation, for those who don't know, it's like an IV. I mean, there's different ways you can do it, but
Yeah.
the like intense version is like an IV um, protocol where you're pulling things like mercury and lead and all that.
Yes.
Which, yes, we don't want those in the body, but
Gotta
if
be
you don't
careful.
detox well,
No.
you
Be
are going to
careful.
get really sick.
Mhm.
So we really baby step into everything
Yeah.
we do. So anyway, just
Yes, there's
something
ways to
important to
go
know.
about that, but for sensitive, like again, I can't stress this enough. Like if you're someone who's like, oh, I can just order tests because Beck and I, we have programs too where we teach you guys different things that we've done for many years in practice. But for sensitive people, for people who really need that extra hand holding, it's worth it. It's worth it because you can get better if you get the help with someone with the experience of how to work with these types of people,
Yeah,
because it's just too hard. It's too hard when you've been doing this for so long and you're just at a standstill because you can't tolerate anything. So you got to go
right.
about it differently.
Yep. So, and then what we find too is that a lot of people who have tried everything and they're not getting
Yeah.
better, they usually have mold somewhere. They're either
Oh,
were exposed to it in a previous residence or workplace, especially if you work for the government. The
ugh,
the housing and the schools and all those places are notorious for mold, and they're also
it's
notorious
really
for doing
sad.
nothing about it. We
Very
have
sad.
patients who we try so hard to help them get out
Mhm.
of, the
Situations or
situation, like if they're working in a school, can they work from home or can they,
I know.
because it's really bad. But anyway, we find that it's a huge, huge problem, and it will make you sensitive quicker than anything. And it will
Yeah.
also degranulate your mast cells quicker than anything. So those are kind of things that we look at, high stress,
Yep.
mold,
Trauma.
gut issues, trauma, mast cell activation syndrome for the various reasons. Those are the main reasons we see people who are very sensitive. So let's talk
So
about,
what are go ahead.
well,
What were
I
you
was
gonna
going to
say?
say, let's talk about what we do. What do we
Mhm.
do when someone comes to the practice and they are this person? This is what we do. Number one, we do testing
Mhm.
to see what's going on, what's driving this. And then we always have them start on some type of brain retraining program.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about the programs we like. We like the Gupta program. We like the Vital Side.
Great.
DNRS is good, but it's a little bit. I think they've made some improvements.
Yeah.
Just from what I understand. As far as the commitment and stuff to that. But it's a great program too.
Mhm.
So something along those lines. Then we want to, one of the main reasons also, which let me back up for a minute because this is something we probably should have mentioned first, being a poor detoxer,
Oh, yes.
which is
Oh, gosh.
genetics usually.
Yeah.
So there's, genetic, we have these genes that help us do certain things. You can have mutations in these genes, which makes it not work properly. And we'll just use the MTHFR gene mutation as a reference because we both have it, and many people have it. A lot of people have it. But methylation is a really important part of everything we do. And one thing is pushing toxins out. So when you do not do this on your own very well, you're going to be that sensitive person. You're going to be the person that can't tolerate protocols because let's say you're killing bacteria and you're putting toxins in the bloodstream. You have no way to get that out because
Right.
you don't push toxins out well. So that means through your stool, urine,
Yeah.
sweating, respiratory system, lymphatic system. These are all ways that we detox. So we always work on gentle detox. We work on supporting the person's specific pathways that need some help, let's say you have the MTHFR gene mutation, you may need some B vitamins to help, but sometimes you're too sensitive for that.
Sensitive. I can't tell
So
you how many people at first, can't tolerate them, but then they start, not genuinely, gradually,
yeah.
start to tolerate them beautifully, but you just have to go about it a little bit different.
Yep. And that was me.
Slower.
I took B vitamins once and I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah.
It can make
Yeah.
you feel very anxious. So before that, we like to do things, and you've probably heard us talk 100 times about gentle detox, but it's that important.
And it
So
works.
things like supporting your liver with castor oil packs over the liver, Epsom salt baths can be good. If you can't tolerate putting your whole body in the Epsom salt bath, you can try just your feet. You can try dry brushing to help with the lymphatic system. You can try lymphatic massage, even can be really
Just
good.
even something gentle as moving your body a little bit. Because
Yeah.
if you're a
Like a
very sensitive
rebounder.
person, yes, if you are a
Yeah.
very sensitive person, you may not be able to tolerate something like lymphatic massage right at
Yeah.
first, but even going for a gentle walk or stretching, moving your body, but sticking with it. This isn't
Yeah.
just doing it once a week. We want to move our body continuously throughout the day. That's where I find it most beneficial.
And moving your body has so many benefits
Oh,
because
yeah.
if you're going for a walk, you're moving your body, which is moving the lymph, right? And
Yeah.
then you're also maybe sweating,
Mhm.
which is helping you to push it out that way. So that's really helpful. And then, even someone who's super heat sensitive, I've done
Mhm.
really well in the infrared sauna.
You
And
have.
I never thought
Mhm.
I would be able to tolerate that. And I can't live without it now,
You do great in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So, and
helped
it
you. I've noticed a big difference with you since you've
huge.
been, yeah, when
Yeah.
you stick with your gentle detox routines, it's night and day difference with
Yes.
your health, I
And I
notice.
always have to do it because my body
Yep.
doesn't want to do it on its own. So I
Yep.
have
It's
to
true.
baby
We're
it.
all the same, guys. We all have to do these things
Yeah.
to stay healthy and be healthy.
Yeah. And I wish I could say, oh, I did that once and now,
No,
now
right?
I'm better. No. Um,
Not how it works.
so, and then we do like supplements because
Mhm.
supplements can be really helpful. But one thing we notice is that when you're really, really sensitive, single nutrient supplements, in other words, don't get a blend
Yeah.
because you might do well with one or two things in the blend and not do well with the other three or even just one, so you
Yeah.
don't know. So we always start with different things. One thing we really like is phosphatidylcholine, but it's actually a phosphatidyl blend. It's like
Yeah.
phosphatidylcholine, phosphatidylserine, like different things. And that's Body Bio is the brand Pure PC. So I take that every day, especially if I'm have been exposed to something, or whatever. Like if let's say I'm painting my house, you can see I have paint swatches up on my wall. You better believe I'm going to be on top of my gentle detox and my
Yes.
supplements for the next week or two.
Mhm.
So some people do well with glutathione, some people do not. So
Yeah.
that
Just
can
start
be,
slow.
yeah, that can be something you might want to wait until you're a little less
Yeah.
sensitive.
Yeah.
Vitamin C can be really helpful because it can help move things. It's also an antihistamine. So,
Mhm.
and it's just really supportive to the immune system. So some people, we try to get them on that. They can do really well. We really like bitters.
It's great.
Yeah, bitters is good. It's has like milk thistle and stuff that's really supportive to the liver in it, but it's also really good for like bile, the gallbladder and
Mhm.
all that. And most of our patients, even the really sensitive ones,
Can
tolerate.
handle that. Yeah.
Yeah. And we
Good.
like Quicksilver's brand, and it's the Bitters X, not the Bitters number 9. The Bitters number 9 has clove in it, and some people with histamine issues don't respond well to clove. So we
Yeah.
say if you really are or have an issue with histamine, try the Bitters X first. And then
Yeah.
I have a product called Liver Love, which has N-acetylcysteine and milk thistle in it, but also like really good mushrooms, like reishi, which is actually an antihistamine mushroom, but they're really supportive to the immune system too. So if you are doing well on like the single nutrient supplements and you want to kick it up a notch, you would then move to a multi-nutrient supplement like Liver Love. And then so let's now talk about some stuff to support the mast cells. So again, single nutrient supplements that we have started people on, perilla seed extract can be really good. It's really supportive to the immune system. People tend to do really well on that. Quercetin can be really good. It's a really good antihistamine. So you can start by taking it alone, and that's what we typically have patients do who are sensitive. We'll start with the single nutrient version, have them go through a bottle, and then we'll move them into the histo relief, which is on my optimal reset line, which has, so many different antihistamines in it together. And most people do really, really well with that, right? Wouldn't you say? I mean,
Yeah.
getting off their Zyrtec and stuff like that.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
It's a
because
great blend.
there's not long-term effects the way that there are with the medication. So
Yeah.
then, you want to think about inflammation. So curcumin can be really helpful for inflammation. If you have an issue with oxalates, though, curcumin might not be where you'd want to start. But resveratrol is really good. It's really good for the immune system for inflammation. Black seed oil can be a good, really potent antihistamine. And then you can take, people always ask me about DAO. So
Mm-hmm.
DAO,
Great.
for those of you who don't know, it's the one of the main enzymes that breaks histamine down. It's made primarily in the lining of the gut. So again, if you have gut issues, it's going to break down more of your DAO. Plus, you can have genetic issues
Mm-hmm.
or actually mutations in those enzymes that break down histamine. And so and nutrient deficiencies. There's a lot of things that go along with lowering your DAO enzyme, which we really want to have good levels of that DAO enzyme to break down histamine ourselves. So you
Yeah.
can take it. You can take it in bovine kidney form. So we like, different things depending on how sensitive you are. So I think it's called ancestral
Mm-hmm.
supplements. They make
Ancestral is good.
Yeah, they make just a bovine kidney. And then if you're like, I'm good, I can do a little bit more, then we like heart and soil.
Mm-hmm.
Soil has that histamine and immune, I think it's called.
Yeah,
It's a
that's what it's called.
supplement. Yeah, so
And
it
we'll put
has
a lot of these in the show notes for you
yeah, we'll
guys.
put them all in the show notes. So
Yeah.
but that has more. It's not just kidney, it's like, liver
Yeah.
and
A blend.
spleen. Because of the immune, you'd want the spleen. Anyway, so that's again a blend. So those are some places that we start. So we start there, we really hone in on the gentle detox and really hone in on working on unpacking what's going on in your body, like trauma, stress. If you're in a horrible relationship, get out of it. I mean, if
Yeah.
you can, get out of
Mhm.
it. And if
Yeah.
you're living in mold, I hate to say this, but you won't get better. You're
Yeah.
not going to unless you're out of it, because something I like to the kind of analogy for this, it's like if you clean your car and then you throw dirt into it and then you clean
Yeah.
like you're throwing dirt in while you're vacuuming. That's
Yes.
what living in mold is doing. You can be taking binders and all the stuff. You're just moving it out and moving it back in. So it's very hard to get better when you're living in mold. But that's, not everyone's there. It's just something we see with some people. And a lot of the time, luckily, it's past exposure and we can just
Right.
give them a protocol, get it out of the body, and they're great.
And, there's a lot you can, and we know how devastating mold is. So there's a lot you can do to support your body if you're in the midst of trying to get out of it. Because we know everybody's situation is different. It's a hard thing to go through, but there are things you can do. You just want to make sure you're doing the right things and working with the right team. And Becky has a great team, you guys. So if you are someone who is just really struggling, get help because you
Yeah.
can get better. It takes time. It takes time, but you can get better.
Yeah. And there's so many things too that we teach the patients about mold because it's not like a quick thing. It's not
No,
like, oh, sure, I'll move out tomorrow.
no.
We do, gentle detox to help open the pathways so that they can at least start pushing stuff out and not accumulate it all.
Looking for more freebies and resources, head over to healthbabes.com to get your free liver support guide. We all know and are learning that supporting your liver is so important for so many things when it comes to health. It's a master regulator, metabolizer, detoxifier. Supporting the body's natural detox pathways is important for overall health and well-being. And that's one thing that me and Beck have found out working with so many patients throughout the years. Once you really start working on your detox pathways, you start to see a lot of things unfold and other things start to get better, right? And so over at healthbabes.com, you can also find a full list of our favorite trusted food, beauty, and health products. Use HealthBabes50 code at checkout for any of our popular at-home health courses. Again, you can find our free liver guide and health courses at healthbabes.com.
And we tell them, different filters and all the things. So
Which is awesome and helpful.
and
Takes a
so,
village.
and so once you're tolerating the single nutrient supplement, and then you can even try getting into some of the things like histo relief that I mentioned. And you can even sometimes do multi-nutrient supplements. Then we can start working on things like the gut. And we can do single nutrient supplement pure, protocols. And we have a lot of patients that can't even swallow pills.
Yeah.
People
Got to
have
do more liquid.
so we have so many different protocols, all liquid and powders protocols, single nutrient protocols,
Homeopathics.
homeopathics, depending on exactly what you have going on, which is why when you're this sensitive, you need to work with somebody because they can really hold your hand and go, this is what I think you should start with. Let's see how you do. You didn't do well with this. This is another one I like. Let's try that. Yeah. And some people,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, and some people don't have to go that slow and don't have to, like I said, there's a spectrum. Like they are sensitive, but we get them detoxing and then boom, they can go right in multi-nutrient supplements and they can knock out those issues that we found on their stool test and then move into the next thing or whatever it is and do really well.
Yeah. And it's just nice too to have that support so that you don't feel like you're on an island when you're that sick and you've been going through this for so long. So it's really cool to, just with my experience with working, in the practice and stuff, just seeing patients from the beginning to, their stories unfold, it's beautiful. So you can get better.
We had a patient who, and Crystal worked with her a lot. She couldn't walk. Remember, she could not walk, and not because she couldn't walk, like from an accident or from a congenital issue. She couldn't walk because she was so sick.
Yes. She was on her couch just for days and couldn't, very minimal foods and couldn't work out, nothing, drive, nothing, you guys, to now is a completely different person and living her life and thriving. So, you can get better. You really can. You just have to.
Always writing us on the portal, telling us like new things she's doing. It's so great to hear because so many people feel so hopeless, unheard. Like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. They have no support. It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah.
And anytime I talk about invisible illness, I get all these people who are like, this is me. So, we do want to help you. So we do have a way to do that. And if you're not able to work with someone and like, you're not able to work with my team, start doing some of the things we talked about in this episode. Yep. And like I said, we'll link to the stuff we talked about. And even if you just start there, you may notice a huge, huge difference.
Yeah. Got to start somewhere.
Listen, guys, we get it. Not everyone has the time, money, or the capability to commit to finding and working with a functional medicine doctor. And guess what? That's okay. You can improve your health and you can alleviate your symptoms in a different way, a much more convenient way. So head over to healthbabes.com/courses and check out our functional medicine at home programs. In those programs, you'll get everything you need to start thriving, feeling, and looking your best today. If you use the code HealthBabes50, you'll save $50 off the course. And this promotion is exclusively for our podcast peeps. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We kind of wanted to touch on this topic because we know a lot of people are dealing with this and there just isn't a lot of people talking about it. And if they are, they're not really giving you actionable steps. So we wanted to try to give you as much as we possibly could that you can do on your own. And then if you need to take it a step further, you can work with us. We'll leave the link in the show notes as well. And we just hope you have some hope. We hope you have faith that you're going to get better because you really can. I mean, I couldn't walk to the bathroom. I couldn't drive my kids to school. I thought I was dying when I was living in mold and had some other stuff. And now I'm great. I mean, I work out every day. I eat whatever I want, which by the way is healthy because that's what I want to eat. But I'm not real restricted. I don't have bad reactions. I have a social life. I have a great relationship with my kids and do all the things with them, which I was terrified I wouldn't have any of that. So I'm here to tell you, you can get better. Any last words, Crystal?
Nope. You said it beautifully.
All right. Well, thanks
for tuning in, everybody.
Listening. Have a great day.
We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, if you can pop over and leave a review, that would be awesome. You can also find us over at healthbabes.com where you can find our courses, our latest book. We also are on Instagram at The Health Babes, at Dr. Becky Campbell, or at Dr. Crystal Home. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.